You're misleading the public. You're lying to people.
We are part of a giant studio set. All the world's a stage and you're on it.
Jesus Christ, can suck my dick. Suck my dick.
Suck my dick, Earth, with that bullshit.
Man's getting rude. Man's getting rude.
It could be a what's it could be an onion ring, a hairless monkey zipping through the vacuum, or a potato rock.
Yeah, if we dumped what we found right now, it'd be bad. It would be bad.
Can't have a can't have a flat earth and things making sense.
Good evening and welcome, YouTube, to a very special edition of Gem's Flat Earth Sunday Roast. Tonight we bring you our most spectacular show ever. In fact, our hangout is so full, the guests have expanded to fill all the available space. I am your host, Gem, and as we are going to be talking about curves tonight, who better to lead that conversation than my lovely co-host, Twit. Hi, Twit.
Hi, guys. How is everybody?
Good, thank you. Joining us as always is our movies and entertainment correspondent, Lewis Hackett.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
There are lots of cats in here tonight, but this one needs no herding. It's the flat-friendly Cat Earth.
Oh, I was just waiting. I didn't know which cat it was going to be. Big up cats.
You're further down the running order, mate. You understand?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It was going to be me, obviously.
We're talking movies, so who better to lead that conversation than our very own Hollywood screenwriter? It's M. Scott Veach.
Hey guys, how's it going?
People often say that Canadians are always friendly and polite, but those people haven't met Quartus.
Nicely said.
We shot our next guest with a tranquilizer dart, bundled him into a crate, and he just woke up to find himself in this hangout. Yes, we captured a real live flatty. It's Spurs Kibo.
Good evening, Flat Earth friends.
Hello.
Our very special guest this evening shot to YouTube fame when he brought us his hilarious comedic style, superior explanatory powers, and extremely shiny head. It's Debunking Superstar and Jimmy Somerville lookalike, Conspiracy Catz!
Hello everybody, how are you doing? You alright?
Hi Catz, welcome. And I am very pleased and so proud to welcome our very special guest this evening from Delta V Productions, the team that brought us the awesome documentary about the Flat Earth movement, Behind the Curve. Editor and producer Nick Andert, producer Caroline Clark, and director Daniel Clark. Good evening to you guys.
Hello.
Good evening.
Sorry about that very, very long introduction, but there's a lot of us here tonight. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's a great honour for us on our little show to have you here with us. We're going to take a look at the official trailer for Behind the Curve in just a moment. But before that, would one of you be able to give us a brief synopsis of what is Behind the Curve? What's it about?
Behind the Curve is a documentary about the Flat Earth community, and it specifically takes a good hard look at how people come to believe this and why they continue to believe it.
Awesome. I mean, I can add to that if you're here in this audience, this is definitely a movie you're going to want to see if you haven't seen it already. And I'm guessing actually many of our audience probably will have already seen it. Anyway, let's take a look at the trailer, which I will have to hit play on. Wrong one. Bear with me, guys. Sorry about this.
Excuse me. Anyone ever told you the Earth is flat?
What?
The number who think the world is flat is growing. Thousands, if not millions of people.
I can't believe I'm talking about this.
There are millions of flat earthers.
If you look on Google Trends, it's like spike.
There's flat earth dating sites. We've got songs.
Flat earth model on my bezel.
The sky is the limit. Probably literally.
Ah, I see what you did there.
Why is it expanding the way it is?
If you get online, you'll see so-called evidence that seems scientific, and you go, maybe they're onto something there.
They find this audience that takes them as gospel.
I just want to feel comfortable in things that I believe.
We're trying to get to the point where it's accepted.
All of us want to connect to people around things that make us unique.
Now we're doing an international conference.
Still can't believe all this is really happening.
At a conference, we want to prove there's no curvature. And if we can do that, it's game over.
We're going to be doing an experiment shooting a laser 3.88 miles.
Everybody has access, absolutely everybody.
We've always been called names.
These people live amongst us.
I've lost friends. I was told I was an idiot.
People give you strange looks, that's fine. Let them think what you want. They're just asleep, going through life. They're just background noise.
I want to believe this. It doesn't mesh with reality, so don't change my view. Change reality.
Mom's always doing the whole glass half full, and I'll say the glass is probably controlled by some sort of sinister group.
Awesome. Well, I loved it. I guess what brought you to Flat Earth, really, I guess is the first question I would want to ask.
Sure. We were looking for documentary subjects. We're always open to something that interests us. And Nick had come across Flat Earth, and I had met someone who was mentioning it, and it seemed to be this growing thing. And we investigated it to see if it was growing and if people actually believed it. Because it seemed pretty far-fetched to us that it would be something that people believe earnestly.
Right, I think it's common. A lot of people think, oh well, they're all just trolls. Is a common thing when people first come across it, I think. Did we lose connection?
I think they might have dropped out for a second here.
Yep, I think they have. Yep.
That's
They're frozen.
all right.
Well, they're surprisingly still and silent.
They look like models or cutouts.
That's a bit of a bummer, isn't it? Just at that moment.
Nathan Oakley's hacked him.
They're trying to shut us down, Jim.
Let's go through. Let's talk about our impressions of the movie, if for those of us that have seen it. Quartus, why don't you lead the way? Because you went to the Toronto premiere, didn't you?
I did, and it was an interesting experience. I think I mentioned this once before on the show, but of course Mark and Patricia flew in to see it as well. And as you've seen, no doubt, if you've watched it, that it's a lot of uncomfortable scenes for those two principals in the film, and it was palpable that they were uncomfortable watching it. So that was that amplified the experience at the time.
Are we back?
Yeah, you're back, guys. Welcome back.
Sorry, my internet's the worst.
Yeah, that's no problem.
We saw it on the internet and thought it was cool.
That won't be the last technical glitch we'll have tonight. I promise you that. It's so where we got to, we were talking about how you came to Flat Earth, I think.
Yeah. Did you get any of that?
Yeah, I think we kind of got to the end of that. So what happens then? So you make the decision that this is going to be something that's worth covering. How do you then sort of go about it from that point to how do you get from there to having footage?
You meet Mark Sargent.
Yeah.
And he keeps talking, and it was beautiful, and he was very charismatic and willing to share all of his life with us. So Daniel went up and met with Mark and filmed with him a little bit in Seattle. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I just grabbed a camera and some audio gear and flew up to Seattle, met Mark in a pizza shop, and we talked for an hour. And then immediately after that, I was like, let's start filming. So I just picked up my camera and started talking to him. And then I met his mother, and she was wonderful. And we spent a few days. I spent 2 days up there, I think, maybe three days. Mm-hmm.
and came back with the footage, and we're like, "Do we have a movie? What's going on here? Like, what did I just do?" And
we did.
But for a couple months leading up to that, even we had been researching it a lot, seeing who was going to be at the conference, because we felt like that was an important thing to get people who were going to be there presenting as some sort of centralized thing we're heading towards, because it was the first conference of its kind.
Right.
Oh, okay. No, we're good. And then we also knew that we didn't just want to make it about, we knew very much that we didn't want to make it about the details of Flat Earth, because there's enough YouTube stuff on it.
Yeah, we didn't want to make it about the question of whether or not the Earth is flat. We wanted to make it about the people in the community and more about like the concept of belief and how they can believe this.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's really, for me, that's the thing that fascinates me. And I think, many of our audience, a lot of us like to engage in the debunking arguments and stuff. But for me, I'm fascinated by what people believe and why they believe it. And Flat Earth is really out there on that one. It's very interesting to see, I guess, from my point of view, the hoops that people seem to jump through to maintain the belief. I say this from my point of view. So then, I know you spent some time with Patricia Steer as well. I'll say as well that from our point of view, this end, it was really quite intriguing, because we kept seeing Daniel pop up in different places, or hear Daniel get mentioned on different things as he was going to be an event, or I know when you were filming Patricia Steer during her live show, you were just there on the side of the image just for a moment because she was explaining who you were, and so it's intriguing to watch. But what was it like spending time with Patricia Steer? What was your impression of her?
She was lovely. She was very kind. Her cats are amazing. Yeah, well, one of the things that I find really interesting about this online community, and also like the backlash of the film, is that all we did was reach out to these people, and then we started talking to them. And I think it's interesting that it doesn't take much more than that. Just send an email, say hello.
Right.
But like hanging out with Patricia, and then Chris Pontius was he's so sweet. I love Chris. It was just very nice. We had dinner. She made me like a salad the first day, like from her garden. It was very nice.
Right.
Yeah,
she's into the health scene, or health foods and that kind of thing, isn't she?
She is. She's vegan, and she likes to eat cleanly, and she doesn't like to put stuff in her body that she doesn't trust.
Right.
Did you notice her cats had no claws?
No.
She declaws her cats. Sorry.
Well, it's a bit of a story in Flat Earth, is that, because her cats apparently are declawed, and she was heavily criticised for this. And apparently this happened by accident. She took her cats to the vet for one thing, and when she went to collect them, he'd declawed them without her asking.
That's not nice. Yeah, she was. Yeah, that's pretty messed up, and she was very upset about that.
Right. Because she transported those cats all the way, as you show in the movie, all the way from the USA to the UK, or as gets mentioned at least, and then back to the USA, the same cat, which Mark has a little joke about. I noticed you mentioned there the backlash. So let's have a look at how this was received in the community.
Just got out of the New York City premiere of Behind the Curve, and I must say that film is definitely Smiley approved, and I give it 9 stinky burgers.
I did not like it.
I actually enjoyed it.
It's a hit piece.
It wasn't for Flat Earth, but it wasn't against Flat Earth.
They smeared it. I can't say it any other way.
Nathan was hilarious. I love Nathan Thompson.
Oh, the animation was hysterical. I loved it.
They were making a little fun of flat earthers, but not too much. It was okay until the very ending, and then they just slammed us like hardcore.
I just thought it was really, really honest. You know, it was definitely an honest portrayal.
The Behind the Curve documentary is most definitely a hit piece against the flat Earth.
It's kind of a love story.
Spoiler: he hasn't, but he really wants to. They give you the truth, but they give it to you in a very distruthful sort of way.
It's like a gentle hate.
That documentary absolutely ruins them.
I had lunch with Mark Sargent last week, and he told me I'd probably get pissed after seeing it, which I am.
The documentary is very good at contrasting actual science with the faux science that is emanating from the flat earth community.
And I think, I'll tell you, highly recommend it. If it ever hits in a town near you, go check it out.
It's a beautiful film. I highly recommend it.
Flat earthers are going to look at this and think it was ridiculous. And on the flip side of the coin, the globe earthers are going to look at this and think it was ridiculous. But the difference is, for us, it's just uncomfortable to watch. For them, it's a comedy.
Because Earth is flat! And you're just denying it, but thanks. Because how can the weakest force known called gravity beat out two greater forces called centrifugal force and the vacuum of space? It can't, because it's the weakest force. Even my vacuum can pick things up off Earth.
So you can see he certainly had a big impact in the flat Earth community on both sides of the fence. What did you think to that? I guess it's probably no surprises in there for you. I don't know.
I don't think that we were particularly surprised by any of the reaction. I think definitely a lot of flat earthers, if the film doesn't affirm their view of the world, they're instantly going to think it's hostile to them. So any film that wasn't like, yes, the Earth is flat, was going to be viewed as something that, they felt criticized them or mocked them. And then some other flat earthers, Mark actually being chief among them, I'd say, did appreciate the fact that the film humanized flat earthers to some extent and didn't actually ridicule them. So there is a spectrum, but yeah, the loudest voices have been pretty... some loud voices have been pretty negative in the flat earth community. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you on our side of the fence, we all loved it. Everyone that I spoke to loved it. I mean, I guess what I would say is that I certainly liked Mark and Patricia at the end of it. I mean, I didn't dislike them before, but I did think it made the people in it. It was quite endearing, the way they were treated, and I did grow to like them. And Nathan Thompson, I thought was, I guess, I know him as someone who's a bit, I guess I would consider him a bit sort of kind of nutty, and whereas in that he's kind of really funny. I thought.
He's a character,
right? He really is. Does anybody else want to give their thoughts on it? Well, because it's just me rambling on now.
Well, I was saying this earlier. I thought it's interesting how people react. So you have the people who are just like, horrible, it's terrible. And then the people who are like, oh, I can see a point in it, it's funny. Or maybe the end, it kind of made a point I didn't like, but they understood the message. And to me, that's the sort of people who are dogmatic. Your John Watson, shout out John Watson in chat. Those kind of people versus the people who are genuinely asking a question to themselves and they're a bit lost in life, maybe. If you're a bit lost in life, guys, flat Earth's not the solution, just saying. But I thought that was interesting what that clip highlighted, is the way people react shows sort of how they're going to go. Because some of these people are never going to come out of flat Earth. They're never going to come out of it, I don't think. And other people are just looking for answers. Sorry, I'll finish now.
No problem. I just want to add, if anyone in chat wants to ask a question, Twit's going to monitor that for me, and she's going to ask those. So do feel free to ask a question in chat.
John Watson's got a question, Twit. John Watson.
How about Spurs, the flatty in the room?
That's what I was thinking.
Anything to say?
No. It was an interesting documentary. As he said, it was just it wasn't a debate or a discussion on the shape of the Earth. It was just more of the viewpoint. So I think probably that's where the disappointment came from. Is that I thought the idea would have been to prove, but it wasn't that. So that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I think from my perspective too, when I was making this film, I wanted to make a film for my peers as well, and so my peers don't think the Earth is flat, and I think would probably dismiss that topic. And so the hope was that if you explore this community, then people might understand this belief system more. So I completely understand that for a lot of people, we didn't go into details and facts and that sort of thing. But I didn't think that would work for the people I wanted to learn about Flat Earth. I didn't think they would sit down and watch that immediately because they weren't watching it on YouTube. So I thought by making a film showing a community of people, it might help kind of both sides come together a little more. So that was
of course. Yeah. I don't think the blame wouldn't obviously come on your side. Again, I think from internally within the Flat Earth, the idea would have been if Flat Earth was given this exposure, I think the initial story would have been to debate. But again, that's it's all good and well, what's happened. But that's the reason I think why people were disgruntled, is because the idea is this high-profile flat earther has an opportunity to debate with physicists, scientists, and so on and so forth. So, but again, you're doing your job, you're reporting. That's what you have to do. So, yeah.
Anyone else got any thoughts?
I had a question about something that they said.
Go ahead.
You guys had said that one of the first things you guys had to do was find out, are these people actually believing this or not? It was important, right, that they were sincere. And it's an interesting question because I think for those of us that have been involved in this for a while now, we go back and forth all the time. We can never quite settle on the right answer for that. Right. I think pretty much not a single person, not a single personality in the flat earth community who I convinced is one way or the other, including someone like Mark. And I was curious, during the filming, during the process, did you change your mind at all as to whether they were sincere or not? Did you find yourself flipping back and forth the way we do? Or did it seem the whole way like they were sincere? And they're frozen.
Oh, it's a good question as well.
No, it's a great question.
Well, you've really stumped them.
Yeah, that's it.
They're frozen in thought.
Do you think that's the CIA CGI thing trashing? Like maybe they're not real.
Shoot. Hopefully you can remember that. All right.
And they're back.
Welcome back, Nick.
Did you catch all of Scott's question?
Wi-Fi. He was asking whether we feel that they're genuine, the people we talk to, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that we, in our estimation, I mean, we spent, Daniel and Caroline more than me, certainly, but spent a lot of time with the flat earthers over the course of almost a year. I don't think that we met any flat earther, including at the top of the community, like Mark and Patricia and them, who we didn't very sincere and genuine in their belief. And there's actually, we've seen a lot of comments because there's an assumption that they're doing this for the money or the fame or something. They're genuinely not making. No one's really making money off of this that we've been able to. But I mean, there's an argument that they're getting a lot of fame and exposure, and that's kind of obviously addicting. And I think there's something to that, and that could definitely be animating a lot of their hesitancy to look at the actual evidence and to think it through logically. But at the same time, I do think that all of them in our film actually do believe it. And I think people underestimate the ability of the human mind to lie to itself, in a way, if that's a good way to put it. These people really want to believe it, and that leads them, I think, to ignore evidence or to skirt arguments and stuff, and it can look very deliberate, I think, from the outside, but in reality, I think, honestly, they're lying to themselves. as much as anyone.
You're going to spark a debate in here, but let's try not. But I think again, this is probably why people were a little bit unhappy. So if Mark is saying there are questions that scientists are unable to answer, and then the scientists are not directly answering, but they're just saying, oh, well, they just have their own belief and their opinions, and they don't understand or they don't get it. But he's asking a question in the documentary which is not being answered. And then, at the end of the video, it's left with, it's just their belief. That's what, because you're saying it right now. You're just saying, oh, well, it's just their belief. And but nothing was answered. Nothing was questioned. Do you see what I mean?
I want to jump on this. I think I understand where you're coming from with that. Really interesting is there needs to be a setup or like a threshold for when someone is willing to accept what they already think. And this is true of everyone across the board. This is not flat earth. This is not globe. This is not religion. It's everything. Is there, and we say this in the movie, is there something that you will change your mind because of?
It needs to be falsifiable.
Falsifiable. If it's a feeling that you have and you're trying to get someone to convince you to change your, I mean, that's a lot to ask someone. And, if you're not willing to accept evidence that they accept, then that's not them trying to argue with you.
I think for a lot of flat earthers, and I mean, this applies to people with all kinds of beliefs that are, they're not, if they're enough of a part of their identity, they become not falsifiable. Like, there's virtually nothing you can do to,
I think
regardless of how much evidence there is. And I think for some people, including a lot of the flat earthers we interacted with, flat earth has become that for them. Like, it doesn't, you can present them with pretty black and white objective evidence, but because it threatens something that has become such a huge part of their identity, for them it's that they'll, in their own head, they'll find some way to talk around it. They'll ignore the truth. And you can go back and forth on whether that counts as like a deliberate thing that they're doing. Certainly, do they have a responsibility to make their beliefs falsifiable? I think we all do, and I think that applies to them too. And I'm not saying you can't criticize them for that, but at the same time, I think it's worth recognizing that at the same time, it's a very, very difficult thing for anyone to do. And even a lot of us have beliefs maybe that, or at least a lot of people in general have beliefs that are also part of our identities that might not be falsifiable. And at the very least, we should have a more empathetic approach to recognizing that that's sort of where their hesitancy or that's where the block is coming from for them. So it can still be criticized. Absolutely. It's not a good thing, but I don't think it's a malicious attempt to deceive, I guess, if that is what I'm trying to say, for most of them at least.
Well, again,
that's interesting.
Sorry, Lewis. I mean, you're going to have to forgive me again, because what I see is character building, profiling of a flat earther. This is how they are, this is how they think, this is who they are, and the question's being avoided. What we're presenting, what we're asking to be put on the table is completely being ignored. And again, this documentary, we thought, would have been a fantastic opportunity for the questions to be. So it's not about the flat earther. It's not about the individual. It's about the questions that we want answered.
But don't you think that some of them were Spurs? I mean, and it's interesting you say this, because I'll just butt in here. I was asking earlier for questions that I might ask tonight, and one of the people from our side of the fence said something similar. Was basically saying, well, why weren't you more challenging to the flat earthers? And I mean, I would say, I think because you had to. Well, it wasn't really about that, but you had to sort of create some sort of balance between being trusted and that way. Anyway, perhaps you'd like to have a stab at those ideas that are being thrown around.
I think more than are the same questions that flat earthers have. So we're not flat earthers, and we come into this film from the perspective of not being flat earthers, and people who participated, like Mark or Patricia, knew that we were not flat earthers. So our questions are just because we are not flat earthers, they're completely different questions that we have. And so I think in order for a flat earther maybe to be satisfied and get a film that they would feel answered the questions they had, it might probably need to be made by a flat earther, which is why YouTube is so great, to ask those questions and discuss in forums. But we just had different questions. I think that's maybe a fundamental,
Right. Yeah. And I think too that that's a really good point, that like we were asking about how they could believe something that to us was not true, whereas flat earthers are asking about the actual rational question of whether the earth is flat or not. But at the same time, we also, in the process of making the documentary, examined the flat earthers asking that question themselves, and we allowed, like, we showed them doing their own experiments, and we still encountered that question and investigated it a little bit, but we did it through their eyes, kind of, which I think is what we were trying to do from a perspective of a documentary where you sort of embed with that community. We're looking at the question through their eyes, and we're letting them ask the questions, and we're letting them find their own answers to them, which are, in the film.
Mm-hmm. Which is why we were so happy to have Jaron and Bob's perspective, because we could see a different perspective outside of strictly maybe YouTube, that they were going out and trying experiments and filming things. That was like something we immediately wanted to follow, because it was a different perspective.
Yeah, and Jaron and Bob are both very intelligent people, and Jaron, it's in the movie, so I'm not saying anything that's new, but he respects the scientific method because it makes sense. If you have a hypothesis, if it fails, then that's an answer that leads to more questions. If it succeeds, that leads to more questions. And
they did design logical experiments. Yeah. Whether they accepted the results or not, obviously, is a question.
That's what I was saying. Is right. If you're going to ask a question, you have to be willing to accept the results as they are.
And that goes back to falsifiability.
It could lead to more questions, but you can't just say, well, that's wrong.
Yeah, you have to let your conclusion be falsifiable, or let your belief be falsifiable, and that's.
Right. But I think that's what's interesting. What you're saying there is that Jaron doesn't accept the results. He's actually done some quite significant experiments or been involved and not accepted the results.
Well, I will be the first to say that we show in the movie they got a result, and then we show his result after. Like, it wasn't a very well staged test in the way that it was black and white.
In the sense that, so what happened with that test at the very end of the film is that they got a lot of null results while they were trying to align the boards in the light, and they got one actual result that pointed to something, which was obviously the globe result that's in the film.
Right.
And Jaron, when we include in the credits Jaron's assertion that it could have also been a null result because there could have been some form of obstruction.
Right.
I mean, and technically you have to control for all variables, and he's right that it could have, and we didn't feel that. To us, it wasn't particularly likely because they were seeing the light at both 17 and 23 when it was not occluded by the board.
Well,
the point being is that all the evidence, they basically did conduct a test that for all the variables they could control as far as they could measure, certainly did seem to point toward the Earth being a globe. But Jaron, in that particular instance, of course, zeroed in on the one possible thing that could quibble with that result.
I was at the test, and as a documentary filmmaker, it's like I'm not supposed to interfere with what's going on unless it puts me at risk, I guess. Which my brother is a laser engineer, and he said, "Can't believe you were there around that laser. That's super dangerous," which it is, very dangerous. What was my point? I really wish that there would have been an A or a B option, like very controlled, over a mile versus over 2 miles, over 3 miles.
Yeah, and I will say, I think that the ring laser gyro test that Bob referred to The Bob was very clear in a recent video that he did not personally perform it with somebody else in his community, but he gave us the results. That was a pretty black and white test, and the results were obviously that the Earth is rotating, and he found an explanation after the fact that allowed him to dismiss those results, which is specifically not allowing those results to be falsifiable. Because if you think about it, whatever the results of that experiment would have been, to him, they would have supported the concept of a flat Earth. That's a very black and white example of their assertion wrong, and then they didn't accept the results.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Hang on, let me get in here. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we've actually got a clip of that to show, and really, this is this clip is one that's really hit the news here in the flat Earth community. So there's a little bit here at the beginning of this, which is Bob, and then there's a couple of bits of Bob in various hangouts, and some of the reaction to it. It's probably a little bit longer than I actually wanted it to be, so I'll have to ask you to endure it. It's not quite 5 minutes long, but let's have a look at Bob and the trouble that this ring laser gyro has ended up causing.
And if we can do that, it's game over. But the rotation is not looking good at this point. We don't want to blow this, you know?
Right.
I mean, we got $20,000 in this freaking gyro. But yeah, if we dumped what we found right now, we would be, it'd be bad. It would be bad. So what I just told you is confidential.
Okay, I won't say.
Bob, one question for you, because a lot of people are looking at this documentary. So just to be clear, when you were talking to the individual and you said something about information being confidential, you're saying that was not something that was recorded without you knowing? It wasn't a hot mic, that you were actually making a statement that was taken out of context? Is that what you were explaining?
No, and it wasn't even taken out of context. I mean, no, obviously I knew I was mic'd. I was wearing the microphone. I knew that he was recording it. And honestly, again, I did not restrain my comments because I knew that I was going to go public with all of it anyway. So, and like I said, not even a week later, I completely disclosed everything on Globebusters about what I said there. Now, I was talking to another flat earther, and I said, yeah, it's like, man, if we let this out right now, it wouldn't be good for flat Earth. So I had to think of a way, you know, to not only let the information out, because I certainly wasn't going to lie about it, but I also had to come up, you know, with a reasonable explanation. Well, at that point, I hadn't even thought about the Michelson-Gale-Sagnac experiment, and that all of this had been done 100 years ago. And then it occurred to me, like maybe even the very next day. I mean, you were actually there at that meetup, by the way, IPS, if you remember. But the very next day, I think I thought of that, and it's like, oh my God, we haven't uncovered anything earth-shattering here at all. Nothing new under the sun, because this was discovered by Mike Michelson-Gale back in 1800 and something. So yeah, I had no intention of trying to hide any of it, nor did I. And believe me, I let it go public long before Behind the Curve came out. That the filmmaker had a definite bias against anything technical being presented against it, and I think it shows very much in the way that they edited this movie together. We are going to offer our rebuttal, which has already been offered before and indeed was sent to the filmmaker Daniel Clark, and he just conveniently ignored it because that would have completely interfered with his agenda on what he was trying to do, in my opinion.
What did Bob say in Behind the Curve that made Flat Earth look crazy?
I told the truth.
What was that, Bob? Tell everybody. What did you tell the truth about?
I told the truth about the fact that a person in our group had bought a fiber optic gyro with his own money and detected a 15-degree-per-hour rotation. Now, idiots like, well, some people...
So the Earth is moving. So
no, the Earth is not moving. I thought you listened to Globebusters, pal. No, the Earth is not moving.
I heard your explanation after the fact but I seen your video before the fact.
Oh yeah, and you know
So,
what? I also
in the
sent
video-
the explanation
in
to
the
those
video,
people,
you
but
give
they
the
cut it
people
out.
The impression that the Earth is moving. So you.
All right, I've had about enough of his crap. I also sent the video to the producers of Behind the Curve, and they elected to completely omit that evidence that this had been discussed all the way back since the Michelson-Morley and the Aries failure
So
experiment.
the Earth is moving, Bob. Is that yes or no?
No, it's not.
Why did you tell the people that the Earth was moving, Bob?
I didn't, you dumb jackass.
That was fun.
It's so funny. I've watched it multiple times now.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Let's get back into it.
The bit of the Bob at the meetup is a clip that I think most people have seen a few dozen times now. I just wondered what your reaction to that was, Daniel. What he'd said about you, the way you'd edited, and what he'd sent you, and that kind of thing.
First of all, I don't think that's funny. That's really weird that the community's reacting that way to Bob, because it's really, because Bob does talk about this all the time. So if you're basing everything you know about Bob off of a clip from a movie, because obviously he knew he was mic'd, he knew he was being filmed, so why would he say something that was confidential? And then people assume that he hid that information from Flat Earth, but he definitely did release that information.
Yeah, I mean,
it's in the film.
I want to add that what he said about doing it on Globebusters, he did do that straight afterwards. It was months and months and months ago. That's true.
So I feel bad that this community, that people are turning on him and kind of, I don't know, being really against him, and he has to defend himself when he was honest with the community. Like, that's what he does, and Jaren does the same thing. Like, they'll report their findings.
Yeah, and obviously we disagree with their interpretation of their findings or their attempt to explain them away.
Right.
And we're not apologizing for that at all. But at the same time, just in the interest of accuracy, like, he did eventually release them before the film came out, like pretty soon after that moment. Yeah, so like, they're, just to be clear about that is true. Do you want to say anything else about?
I mean, I people can say what they want about my agenda. We come from a perspective that the Earth is spherical because everything in our existence has led us to understand that as true. And, when we started this film, Nick hates when I say this, but like, I was making sure to myself, I said like, okay, these are some Flat Earth clues or some proofs or whatever you want to call them. And I went through them all and I said, okay, this is what the claim is. What is the counter? What is the counter argument? And a lot of people who are in Flat Earth, and Mark says it in the film, said they tried to debunk Flat Earth and they couldn't, and that's why they became Flat Earthers. Well, I tried to debunk Flat Earth and I could,
right?
At least to myself.
Yeah.
So
when Mark says that selection bias, they're only seeing the people who couldn't.
Right. So I mean, to me, their arguments weren't valid, or that's probably a cruel way to say it, but their arguments didn't convince me. And nothing, and Bob had a lot of the Michelson-Morley, the Aries failure. That's all interesting, but there are a lot of other things like relativity.
It's also
gravitational waves that have been detected, and it's all stuff that also it's exactly what he's saying. There's a science consensus that the other stuff is true. Choosing to believe these few experiments over the many accepted ones and all the other ways, like how we have satellites, like
he's cherry picking evidence that supports this. Yeah, what Daniel. So what Bob is doing is he's cherry picking experiments from 100 years ago that have been, debunked or explained, and he is using them to support the conclusion that he wants to reach. And I mean, Bob even says actually in those videos, like, I don't want to like say this to be cruel to Bob, but in the interest of accuracy and honesty, he even says like the reason he didn't release the experiment or the results immediately is because he didn't know how to explain them, and he waited until he found out how he could explain them. And he went back and he found a way retroactive into them, even if it's not correct. And then he went public with them, because to him it was about maintaining and preserving the ability to believe that the Earth was opposed to saying, like, this experiment falsified my belief, I'm going to accept that.
It's a fascinating actual thought experiment to reverse engineer a result like that and figure out, okay, what would be the conditions. And then people do it with the sun and flat Earth, like how seasons change and the sun goes.
It's the opposite of Occam's razor. Instead of just accepting the simplest explanation for something being true, they'll complicate and complicate and complicate the explanations for things until it somehow works in their model, because they want their model to be true. And that goes to the conversation that's had in the film in that scene with Spiro's a physicist from Caltech and Tim Urban, who's a science writer, where they discuss the nature of belief and how a scientific way of thinking is accepting that you don't know where you're going, you're going to go wherever the evidence leads you. A faith-based way of thinking is starting with this belief and then working backwards to it. And that's what the flat earthers have been doing with their experiments. Even if they get the results that debunk it, they constantly explanations until they get to some way that, in their minds at least, makes their belief make sense. And that's why, honestly, debunking them or showing him how they're wrong, it's a tricky thing, because they're always going to have that out to try to find a way.
Sorry, again,
it's almost a waste of time. Sorry.
Well, this is the thing, you see.
Sorry, I was going on for a while.
Well, this is the thing, you see. If you guys are now saying, I still don't see, I've done this documentary and I still can't see why they believe in the flat earth. So again, you obviously haven't spoken to the right flat earthers or flat earthers that would tell you why
I
they
think
believe
that's true. I interrupt you and just say that we've talked to a lot of flat earthers who have tried to convince us. And I mean, if I'm trying to convince you that the earth is a sphere, I don't think you're going to listen to me. I could give you a lot of change your mind.
Oh, I've listened to lots of arguments.
You listen to me, but I don't think you'll accept any of what I have to say. And the same is true, I guess, with me with flat earth.
Right. Yeah, but I would accept your arguments if you could demonstrate what you were talking about. Of course, we could make claims, all kinds of claims, and if you're
we don't want this to turn into a debate.
Right,
but
we don't.
If I could summarize Chemo's position in one sentence, it would be that if he pumped out all the atmosphere in the Earth, we could see all the way to Australia. And I think that fits perfectly into what you were saying about the opposite of Occam's razor. All right, I'm out.
What's happening is you're
say your final words, Chemo, because we don't want to make this a debate.
Saying that it seems like you're still at a loss. How are these people flat earthers? We've done this documentary. We spent a year with these guys, and we just can't see why they're still. So it seems to me you obviously weren't challenged in the right way. You weren't questioned in the right way, and you didn't research in the correct way. All it seems is that you've looked at a bunch of people making a lot of noise. You tried to find out why, but you haven't really understood why it's so big, why you're researching in the first place. There's obviously something going on. They're not just there. They don't just wake up and say, "Okay, the Earth is flat." So this question,
I think the entire movie is that exact question and inquiry: is why did people believe this? And talk about that the entire movie. I think that's exactly what the movie is.
Right. I wanted to say, have you seen it, Chemo? Because that is exactly what it addresses. Sorry, go ahead, Daniel. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, I have watched it. Yeah, of course. I watched it on Netflix.
Anyway, shall we have a look at a few more bits before we get to
wait, can I just say one final thing? I want to say at the end of the last one. I think you guys absolutely hit the nail on the head. There's no point letting Spurs or I'm not no disrespect Spurs, I love Spurs, but there's no point letting them lead you down the path of experiments and these kind of things, because they don't get it, and you'll end up, like a lot of people here, you'll end up learning the entirety of science just to try and disprove them, and they won't believe it in the end anyway. So right. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about why they believe it in the first place, which is more psychological. It's not to do with the.
And again, as Daniel said, when I got into flat Earth, there were things in it where I think particularly some of these horizon observations, these long range observations, where you know, I didn't really know about refraction. I kind of had some idea that maybe I'd heard it in a science class or something, 30, 40 years ago. But, you know, I didn't really know. And I was looking at these things and I was thinking, well, how can we see that? Why is that? You know, and it is an interesting subject to get, excuse me, to get into and try and, solve some of these problems. It's just, interesting to know why is that like that?
And I'll say that, like, it's not, especially people that maybe don't have a, like when flat earthers ask their questions of like, well, what about this? What about that? It's easy to, look at those questions and think like, oh yeah, what about that? Because they ask them in a way that is very, like they'll point out something that's observable to you that's not intuitive. And the fact is that like a lot of the reality of nature around us is not intuitive to your average person because we live in a very complicated world, and the answers to these things are very complicated. And that sounds like a cop-out if you don't have the scientific understanding, or you've not done the work to understand why, this is this way, that's that way. If you have not done experiments yourself, it can be really hard to come to terms or to accept that, like, I have to accept that the answer to this is non-intuitive, but it is this way. People want to always gravitate towards the most intuitive explanation for things. And, the reality of the globe Earth is not particularly intuitive, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Not rocket science for a reason. Rocket science is very complicated.
Right, yeah.
Right. Let's take a look at some clips that...
sure or not.
Oh, sorry. I've just got... I've got 3 little clips, but I'll run them one by one. But just a few little lovely moments, I thought, from the movie. So, first of all, we've got Nathan Thompson.
This is Edward Hendry's masterpiece, The Greatest Lie on Earth. I'll just read you a little bit from the table of contents real quick. The first chapter is Samuel Rowbotham proved the Earth is flat.
Am I a bit ahead? I just thought that was very funny the way he started reading a book while he was driving a car.
Yep.
Were you in fear of your life at that point?
Hands completely off the wheel while he flips through the book.
Yes. If you watch that clip again, you'll see the camera jerk. Because I'm looking through the viewfinder and I look to see if he's touching the wheel, and he's not. Yeah, I think in that moment I had a choice.
Yeah.
Do I keep filming or take the wheel myself?
I think they froze up again.
Yeah, they did.
Oh gosh.
He had just bounced golf balls off hammers and sledgehammers and a bunch of I was like, this guy's probably pretty coordinated.
He has a lot of dexterity.
Yeah, I feel like I'm actually, if anyone's going to do this, I'm glad it's Nathan.
Right.
Yeah, well, he's had the brain training after all. So
I mean, I tried when he was doing the golf ball off the sledgehammer. I was like, "Can I try that?" He's like, "Sure," and it's virtually impople to do.
Right.
I challenge anyone to do it.
That's one of the interviews we should have gotten is this brain coach Michael Lavery. Yeah. We didn't interview the brain coach.
It's a lot of skill and time that went into that, and he does it effortlessly, and it's very commendable.
Yeah, there you go.
I met Nathan in a hangout once and asked him if I could meet his brain coach, and he just laughed at me. So I don't know.
He has a website.
There's a website.
I'm sure there is.
Right, so we've got another little clip here. This is Patricia reflecting. I love this one. Oops, forgot the sound.
Want to believe about me, but I wonder if in their hearts, people who do that know they're lying, or are they so conspiratorial that they actually believe it? Then it makes me worry about maybe things I believe in. Am I like another version of them? But I know I'm not.
That one got a big reaction from the audience at the showing I was at.
That is, it's a very powerful moment because it's almost like the supervillain in a Disney movie coming to terms with why they're doing what they're doing.
Cruella de Vil, surely. Just saying.
Exactly.
Sorry, I don't mean to be vague.
It was a very interesting moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then finally we've got a bit of Mark. Let's get straight into this. Where have we gone?
Bit of Mark.
I think they're frozen again.
So the big reason why the lead character left when he discovered his entire world was fake was he had nothing to lose. Jim Carrey was inevitably going to leave that place because there was nothing for him inside. Compare that with anyone else. Let's say we'll go to the other end, which would be the mayor of that town. Let's say the mayor of that town got in a sailboat and got out to the edge. The guy's got limos, the guy's got mistresses, he's got money, he's got a pretty cushy life. Does he open the door and face the devil you don't know versus the devil you know? No.
Wouldn't you say, in a sense, though, like you're now the mayor of Flat Earth?
What do you reckon the battery life he gets on that tie is?
Too long.
Just saying, you can't put a massive battery on that tie because it would just weigh it down. So.
Even he feels. I heard him talking about that. He doesn't know why he wore that. Like it was wrong. But here he is in this film with the glasses and the tie, and he just.
That's the best thing he's ever done. In my opinion.
Yeah.
That's a sick tie. Like,
I just thought it was a brilliant question though from Daniel, I guess. Aren't you the mayor of Flat Earth? And that look on his face, I just thought that was brilliant. It was a wonderfully elegant question that sort of said so much with so little, I thought.
I just couldn't help looking at the tie. Sorry.
Hello?
Yeah,
you're there.
Good.
Yeah, okay, we're back. It wasn't letting, so it was full. But
I don't know if you know the clip. We just did the clip of Patricia reflecting on and then Mark and the mayor of Flat Earth comment.
Yeah, I mean the Patricia clip obviously it's tough a little bit to watch because I mean for all the reasons obviously that you guys I'm sure think the same. She's so close and doesn't quite.
I think a lot of people are experiencing that.
Yeah.
In the community, it's not just Patricia's definitely the biggest, I would say, victim of that sort of behavior. Yeah. Probably, but
and again, like the important context to this film is that these are not conditions limited to flat earthers. These are human conditions that we have blind spots and we don't necessarily see everything clearly from our perspective. And so that's why in the end of the film, we also ask the question to our audience, where are you a flat earther? Where are you believing things without maybe taking a bird's eye view? And so it's not a Patricia condition. It's a human thing. And I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
We're not diagnosing anything. Like that's not our goal here. It's a human thing.
Sure.
That was probably my favorite part of the film was that aspect of it. It's that these guys have this thing that they're unwilling to they won't consider any evidence against, and they'll continue to hold this belief forever because of how it makes them feel. So the answer is to turn around and look within ourselves at the things that make us feel the same way. And
exactly.
It was actually a very powerful film on such a ludicrous subject.
Thank you. I think like the problem is that obviously convincing somebody else that I mean, you guys all know like debating somebody on a subject like this is very difficult, and in most cases you're probably not going to convince anyone of your position. but at the same time do is open ourselves up to a more rational way of thinking. So even if you're gonna never convince the flat earther that the earth is not flat, at the very least what you can do is ensure that you never succumb to any sort of irrational belief yourself,
right?
Whatever it may be, regardless of other, but like sort of inoculating yourself against that way of thinking, I think is really important. Especially, you look nowadays, there's anti-vaxxers on the rise. Obviously, climate change denial is a huge problem. There's a lot of other different topics that are much more widespread where people are approaching them with similar illogicality. And I think inoculating ourselves against that's really important. So,
I have can I ask a question, which is that on this subject, did you find, as documentarians, I feel like there's a weird way in which what you guys do is very much about epistemology. It's very much about being sort of balancing being objective and then also having a vision or a perspective. And I'm wondering if you feel like what you guys experienced in making this film will affect the way in which you make future documentaries at all. Did you learn anything about belief and your own beliefs, or did you get insights in any way?
No. No, I'm the same.
No, yeah, it definitely did. Yeah, unless you're being serious.
No, and even just like, for me, something like prejudice, right? That's one of my big takeaways from this film is like, you have an idea about someone and you think they're different than you. And you, I had this conversation in a bar recently where someone was asking me what I did. I told them about this film and they said, they kind of laughed, oh, flat earth, haha. And then they said, well, they're really uneducated, right? And I said, no, that wasn't my experience at all. And then he kept kind of saying things like that to kind of in a corner that was separate from what he thought of himself. And I think what's important is I keep coming back to, like, they're not different than me and really many ways except this one belief. And so, the us versus them, the other kind of thing, that's something I continue to learn, is that we're all way more common than different.
That's, very true. Definitely, yeah. I like that story because it's very much someone wanting to separate themselves.
And by the way, I didn't change his mind. I couldn't get him to see flat earthers as different, even though I tried. Like, he kept putting them in a different box. It was
right.
Yeah. She's like, well, they're from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Type you want.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to feel separated from something that doesn't please you.
Right. So, what are your plans for the future then? Have you got another documentary in the making, or will you be revisiting Flat Earth?
Things that we're developing.
Do the Ball Earth documentary, like I was saying earlier, because seriously, all the Ball Earthers are mental as well. Seriously, it's like what you're saying. We're all the same, really. We all love flat Earthers, whether we're flat Earthers or not.
On screen, but
we're all into it. We all love it. You need to find out about these Ball Earthers. They're gone mad because they're sitting in Gem's Discord all day, right? They're arguing, with the same two trolls like Spurs and Debbie or whatever. Like, even though they're trolling them, or Spurs, I don't know, they're just crazy. You know what? They're just fun crazy, But they're getting trolled, and they're getting so hyped up about it. There's people making songs about them. They're not. To me, it's like picking on someone. Do you know what I mean? In the street or whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? It just feels weird. I think some ways it's weirder to be picking on flat earthers than to be a flat earther. And I don't say you're picking on flat earthers, guys. I'm just saying, do you know what I mean? To have that sort of.
So, Jem, do we have any more clips?
That's it.
Okay. Did we want to give a minute or two for some questions from the audience? Chat?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that. Do you have any lined up?
I do. I've had several. I'm really glad to see that people are thinking. This is in no particular order, and it's only the ones I caught. So the first one from some of our chat guys, and I don't know if they're flat earthers or they're globe earthers, but the first question that I see is, Did you find any other flat earthers that you were interested in possibly looking into while you were filming this documentary with these characters, with these people?
Yeah, it was ever evolving. I mean, I think at first it was just Mark. He was the first person who let us talk to him. And then he kind of led us to Patricia, who we found interesting. And then we always wanted to talk to Chris Pontius because he makes it awesome. And then I think through that we found out about Bob and Jaren's experiment. Well, we found out about Jaren's experiment and Bob's gyro test.
Yeah.
And we reached out to a few more people. I mean, Matt, obviously.
Yeah, Matt's obviously the one that's in the film that didn't say yes to us. But.
It was kind of an evolving process. So as we were going, we said, oh, it'd be nice to get this perspective. And it was kind of like that because Bob was an engineer and Jeremy was doing experiments, and Patricia was more of kind of a community. I guess the interviewer is what we kind of labeled her as, and Mark was a lot of people's gateway into the flat Earth movement.
Yeah, we like the idea that all these people have their very specific roles in their community, and they all approach the community in a different way.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Another question was, is there anything about the flat Earth that you've looked into deeper, more in depth, since you have run across it?
Yeah, I mean, there are dozens of examples of things we've looked into, but also, we were present for so many experiments, or at least heard about the experiments, and were able to watch things online about them. So we've seen that as well.
It's actually funny that one of the results, I think, of engaging with the flat Earth community is you can actually better understanding of science. We were recently on a panel with a science communicator named Ashley Landrum, who had a really interesting point that if you ask most people to debunk flat Earth who just hadn't thought about it before, most people actually couldn't give you the answer. Mm-hmm. But in conversation with flat Earthers, if you look at the arguments they're putting forth and you look at the counter arguments and the evidence, you actually can learn a lot about science through that. I mean, we feel like we've learned a lot about all sorts of things, honestly. Gravity, and I mean, I personally feel, I think I've heard other people say this too, that a lot of the flat Earth belief system comes down to a misunderstanding of gravity, and I think there's a lot to be learned about that. So yeah, I think we went through making this interestingly.
Nice. Did you ask about other theories that these flat earthers that you happen to interview, what other theories, conspiracy types that they were into or that they were interested in? Or was there a common conspiracy theory type cloud around the flat earthers that you did interview?
Look at me. We've definitely found overlap, and Mark explained in the film as Flat Earth is the last book on the shelf that you've probably looked at a whole bunch of other conspiracies before you found yourself in Flat Earth. So, I think there are a lot of times they're connected, and in conversations, one conspiracy such as Flat Earth led to a discussion about another conspiracy.
Yeah, there's very little in the conspiracy world, I think, that Flat Earthers don't seem to take as a given. Because their mind is so... I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but their minds are so open to the concept of conspiracy that if you pitch them a possible conspiracy, I feel like in general, trying to believe that it's true. So they
rather than to just immediately dismiss it.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I feel like virtually everyone we talked to, from what I can think of, they all believe the crisis actor conspiracies, and they all believe in 9/11 conspiracies. Mm-hmm. In fact, I feel like 9/11 is the gateway drug conspiracy almost, where that's how people got into conspiracies in the first place. So yeah, I mean, we even know people who, frankly, believe in 9/11 conspiracies and no other conspiracy, which is frustrating. But yeah, that's a pretty common one that people tend to believe, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you don't know about 9/11. You do know the Earth's not flat, but you don't know about 9/11. Just saying.
I have a couple more if you have an extra minute to listen. Were you aware of the globe Earth side, the glober side, the globies of the equation, of the flat Earth equation on YouTube? did you happen to catch any of the Globe Earth shows or the Globe Tard shows?
Yeah, I think, yes, we were definitely aware of it. And I think it's probably gotten a lot more refined at this point. There seem to be a lot more people. Maybe it's just me, selection bias. Maybe I'm just noticing it more.
Right.
But we
No,
definitely
there are more.
did a lot of that. Because we were film, I watched hours and hours of flat Earth videos, proofs, and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And discussions, things like that, Glowbusters. And sometimes I'd be curious and I'd want to see the other side of that coin. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'd watch some of the other arguments. I don't know any names specifically, but
Okay.
at the time.
Sort of a follow-up to that. You just said you didn't know any names, but have you heard of Soundly?
No.
Okay. All right, cool.
Actually.
Next question.
You should buy his merch, though. Soundly's merch.
This one kind of goes back into the sorry, Spurs. This one kind of goes back into the conspiracy thing, and it's relatively new, so I'm not sure if you guys would have picked up on it back when you were actually filming or in the process of researching the flat Earth. But we have a situation that's come up, and it's called mud floods and Tartaria. Have you heard of this?
I've heard the term mud flood a lot with Bob's most recent thing because he was talking about it and people were mad that he was talking about it. But
I've never heard about
could
this.
you give me like the quick overview?
This is new to me.
Well, I'm probably not the best one to give you the overview of mud floods. I think maybe one of the guys could help you out on that.
Mud flood happened everywhere.
Okay.
The idea is that history has been faked, and that there were these cyclic resets that happened every so often in the past, where everything was flooded with mud, and we all had to sort of essentially start again and rebuild. And that some of the buildings in North America are from a previous reset period before, and so were built before Europeans arrived. Actually, if you want a good sort of 10-minute breakdown, if you watch my show from last week, we do a rundown on it there to sort of all the conspiracies, but there's a lot of conspiracies tied up in it. It's very complex.
Yeah. There's the free energy conspiracy in there too. And yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff.
I think what's interesting about the whole thing about why they're interested, is because the flat Earth is kind of dying as a topic. We've been here for years talking about it, and they're looking for something new. And it seems like this mud flood is the new thing that they're trying to move to, but it's not sticking with everyone.
I find the theory fascinating that you can't prove that the world didn't start. Simulation theory, basically. I think that's fascinating, but it's unfalsifiable, and everything else in my existence proves that to not be true. But
right.
Yeah, but how do you know you exist?
Yeah, Mark actually even said that. Mark even said that,
Sorry.
I was going to say, Mark even said that when he was looking into flat Earth, part of the reason he was because he was getting bored of other conspiracies. I mean, that's what led him to look at it in the first place. I think that's a pretty common thread. I think people get sick of one thing and they move on to another.
Okay, well, the last question that I have seems to be the most overwhelming question I received today from both flat earthers and globe earthers, was that, are you guys considering doing a follow-up?
The ball earth one, come on.
We're not. We feel like, I think we said what we wanted to say with this film, and we're probably going to be moving on to other topics, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said our piece on this, and I'm always happy to talk about it, but I think making another documentary wouldn't necessarily warrant any new insight.
I don't know what else we would say.
Right.
I'm curious about the end of this documentary, when you were done and you went to go sell it. I don't know what you can say about this, but what kind of commercial success did you guys find? Was it easy to sell? Were you surprised at how many people were interested or not interested? I mean, what was that process like, and what can you say about how you guys did it?
Well, no doubt, like anytime you bring up flat earth, people want to talk about it for hours. Like we have hijacked 2 minutes by just kind of bringing up our film. So it's been certainly something people want to talk about and engage with. And we're really happy that it's out on so many platforms so that hopefully wherever you buy your movies or content, you can find this now. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask, why do you think people debate flat earthers? I mean, if it's something that's nonsense, why do intelligent ball earthers, who know science, why do they even engage?
Yes,
there is a. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, I want to ask you guys, not our panel, the special guests only, please. Yeah.
Sure. I think of my brother, because my brother's very into science. He's an optical engineer, very good at what he does, and he's very physics oriented, very minded. And anytime there's someone who doesn't understand what he knows, he's like, and this is, but he's like, oh, they're an idiot, they don't get it. And I think that there's some desire to teach someone something that they don't understand. It's kind of a form of mansplaining, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So they assume, like if this person if I only just could talk to this person and tell them why they're wrong, then they'll understand and they'll come around. And I think that's just like a desire to, I don't know if it's desire to help, but it's a desire to push your knowledge onto someone else.
Well, there's an old adage that if you want to get an answer to a question on the internet, you don't ask a question, you post something that's wrong, and then instantly 5 people will show up to correct.
Right. Yeah.
I think the nature where it feels wrong, we instantly want to hop on it and correct it. And so flat earth is something obviously that in most people's worldview is very it's very outside their worldview, and I think it's something that people instantly want to correct because it's so wrong to most people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I see.
It's low hanging fruit. It's easy, isn't it? So a lot of people.
Do you think because there was a time when flat Earth wasn't here? So do you think it will go away? Do you think it will continue to rise, or do you think? How do you see it? The future of flat Earth?
Yeah. We haven't seen it fall off or anything like that. I think our experience has been that it's steady.
Pretty steady.
Yeah. I honestly think that it'll just maybe slowly fade, but I have no information. I don't know.
I think the same. I think it's going to be around for a long while. Yeah.
Finally, sorry. So I mean, you don't see it as like a dangerous thing, like Neil deGrasse.
The only danger I see is, and this is with any belief that people hold, and this goes to anything you want to pick out, just name something. If it's just your belief, that's one thing. But if you're putting it onto someone else, and that's making the lives and the quality of life for other people, then I think that's where it becomes a problem. So if you think the Earth is flat, if you're making changes to satellite structures based on your belief of the flat Earth, and that's going to affect communications for people, I think that's problematic. I think some oversight with that.
Yeah, my concern would be,
example.
I mean, kind of, but my concern is that, I don't want this to sound obnoxious, but I think flat Earth is more symptomatic of a larger issue that does concern me, where flat Earth itself is not particularly concerning. Because I think the problem is that the territorial and science denialism are on the rise because, in my view, from everything we've seen, I think it's because the internet's sort of enabled confirmation bias to a degree that we have never, seen before. And I don't think we just, as a people, have figured out what to do about that yet, or how to combat that. And we're seeing these, conspiracies take off and have a lot. They, whether it's flat Earth or something else, they form these communities, and they, and eventually you're going to get some conspiracies that are really dangerous, and we've seen that already, and contributes to this. Again, it's an irrational way of thinking. that I think is starting to, I don't know, permeate society more than it had before. And I think that is dangerous. And I don't know how we combat that. And that's one that concerns me, I guess. So,
Can I ask a question? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Catz. Please do.
Sorry, sure. I've got a bit of lag at my end. I don't even know if I'm speaking over someone or not. Sorry. You kind of touched on this already, but you were saying before that a lot of flat earthers kind of buy into all lots of different conspiracies, etc. But to me, I look at a flat earther and I think if they're going to believe that literally the entirety of the the infrastructure of the world is against them and all these different conspiracies are against them, for me that would weigh on me as a personality. That would affect my life. Did you see the individual sort of like character? Did you see them depressed by that? Did you see it affect them in a negative way, or did it just kind of bounce off the shoulders?
I guess it kind of depends on the person, but I thought more often than not, it seemed to me that seems to be true.
But I think it's also to realize that that's what's going on. It kind of gives you a little satisfaction, so you're not in the dark.
Yeah, I think there's they have that like feeling of special knowledge where like they know something everyone else doesn't, and that's satisfying in a way. But at the same time, it's a very cynical worldview, and you view people in general very, I don't know, pessimistically. Although the interesting thing is, most of them view people they don't know very cynically and pessimistically. Like they view the wider world that way, and then when they meet you, they tend to give people they meet in person the benefit of the doubt, just like a lot of people do, because we have, I think, that human thing where like you don't seem so bad. And like, for example, like a lot of the flat earthers who met us part of some wider conspiracy to the flat earth community or anything like that, they're like, oh, we know them, they're nice. And then a lot of the flat earthers who don't know us, because we're just nameless faces, they're like, oh, they're part of the CIA, like counter whatever. Like,
yeah. And they've never bothered to, like, I know people like select random things from our IMDb's as saying proof that we're in the CIA, but they're ignoring all the other stuff that we've done. And I think that's, talk to me.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with me and you have questions, you think I'm in the CIA, ask me about it.
You can't tell us anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
a CIA agent would say that, of course.
Like you can, yeah. Find someone in the CIA and see what they're like, and then come to my apartment and see that.
It's a bad experiment. Don't do that.
Don't come to my apartment. It's very good.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've kept you guys ever such a long time, so I want to thank you once again for giving up your time for being with us this evening.
Of course.
And again, Behind the Curve is a brilliant documentary. I loved it. Anyone that's here watching us, I know they'll want to see it. And it's available just about everywhere. It's on Netflix, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Prime, and other places. So thank you once again so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yes,
thanks very much.
Your documentary was great. I loved it. Watched it twice.
I watched it multiple times as well. We have the outro left to go. Be sure to mute your mic for that as well.
Oh, we've still got more. We've got some conspiracy cats to go yet.
Yeah, don't pause the show yet,
jeez.
man.
It's your own show, Lewis.
What are you doing?
I know, it's
All
a
right,
bumper mega show.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Take care.
Lewis got his pro microphone and now he's all like, oh.
Yeah, but I screwed up there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I jumped the gun on where
Conspiracy
we
Cats,
are.
I do apologise. I feel like I've kept you waiting for ages, mate.
CC.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just
It's all about you
apologising.
now.
I feel like I've kept you waiting so long. I do apologise.
No, I've really, really enjoyed that. That documentary was absolutely brilliant. I got a notification. Simon Dan did a review on it on Friday, and I thought I didn't realise it had come out on Netflix. So I thought I can't watch Simon Dan's video till I've watched the documentary. So yeah, but as soon as I got home, put it on, and it was brilliant. My wife, who isn't into any of this, she sat and watched them as well. It was just really absorbing. The way that it really delved into the characters, I thought was great.
Right. I think for people on our side of the argument in particular, it really does. It tells their story in their own words as we see them. I think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there were a lot of very familiar faces.
Anyway, tell us about. What it starts with a housekeeping question. I think this one, doesn't it? Is that right?
Okay.
And it's one of Nathan's house. You cannot have gas pressure. Any sign of gas pressure without a container is question. And I think you've responded to that, and as a result of that, there seems to be this sort of a bit of to and fro. But they have been really, really vitriolic about this.
Extremely, but I think it actually goes back quite a while. This does. I don't know how long. Have you got a minute for the backstory, or?
Oh yeah, we got plenty of time, mate. Yeah. So, I know you're on a school night.
Oh no, I don't have to go in the morning. I'm all right.
Oh, we've got as long as it takes, then, mate.
President's Day, Jim. Come on.
Well, when I started Conspiracy Catz, it was because of Anthony Riley. It was because of him, because I'd got in touch with him to help me out for something I was doing with my school, with the school kids, and I didn't want to make videos about Flat Earth for the school website, the school YouTube channel. So I started Conspiracy Catz. But out of respect, really, for Anthony, I always stayed away from Flat Earth. And if you watch my first videos, the first 10, 12, 13 videos, they were all about different things. And then I went on Nathan's show, and I'd always been dead friendly and no problems, dead civil with all of us. And I went on Nathan's show, and Nathan did his thing, and he tried to mute me and shout me down and hijack me. And it was about gas pressure. We were talking about gas pressure, and I didn't stay to discuss it. I just literally, I said, right, I'm not one of your, I'm not putting up with that. And I just hung up, and that was it. And he spammed my channel. So he literally left me, I'm not kidding, about 2,000 comments saying, tell me about gas pressure, tell me about gas pressure, tell me about gas. And I've just ignored him. But since his channel's been down, and I thought he's got no benefit from me now, coming out and, doing a little bit of science on gas pressure, I thought now's the time to do it. But he's obviously still a bit sore.
Right. Shall we have a look at how sore he is?
Let's do that.
All right. Here's a clip of there's some of Riley and some of Nathan.
His position hasn't changed. You see that box, right? Earth doesn't have that around it. So you know what's going to happen to all those molecules inside that box if you open the box, and the outside of the box has got a differential of pressure. Let's say 10 to the minus 17 torr. All those little dots inside that box are going to fuck right off into that empty space. Now that would be space. It's his religious belief. So, conspiracy flaps, you stupid twat. If you don't have that box, all of those little dots are going to fuck off into that empty space. That's your religion. You've got us with no box around us and a massive differential, 10 to the minus 17 torr, that the gas doesn't go into. All bollocks. That's a second law of thermodynamics violation, Conspiracy Catz. You complete fuckwit. You need a second law of thermodynamics violation, and the best you can do is dots on a white page with a verbal description of a second law of thermodynamics violation. You complete idiot. You think you're clever. No, you can't defy the second law of thermodynamics. Let me school you, Conspiracy Catz. That little dotty ball in the middle of that vacuum, that's not Earth. That's what you think needs to happen. You need a second law of thermodynamics violation, and the best you can do is dots on a white page with a verbal description of a second law of thermodynamics violation. You complete idiot. Conspiracy Catz, you are possibly the most stupid person to ever teach children. How dare you ever consider yourself an educator when you are literally detailing a second law of thermodynamics violation with your pen and paper? You utter disgrace to science.
Because basically what you're about to discuss is bullshit. And you need to be told it, and you need to be told it straight to your face. I'm showing you the whites of my eyes on purpose, because you're talking shit. And that makes it, from your perspective, critical, not intelligent. But from my perspective, this is the attack that you deserve, because you are teaching shit. Then we need to warn students that this is bullshit. And if we don't warn them, then we are deceiving them with bullshit science. So he's wrong. And I don't understand how he can possibly argue this. This is a nonsense argument. It doesn't make his point for him. It's bullshit. It's not true. You can't have gas pressure without a container. It's that simple. It's honest to God, it just drives me mad, and I understand why Nathan was so aggressive with this guy in chat the other night. And he's right to be aggressive because this guy is deceiving people. You can't do it. I don't understand how he doesn't get this. You can't have it in the first place, dickhead. You can't have the gas without the containment. So you're arguing it from the perspective of energy. Well, you may well be right, but energy's not the criteria. You can't have the gas pressure in the first place regardless of the energy. You can't have it. Sorry, but you're wrong. And misleading people with false statements of fact, and you're in a position to know better. That makes it wrong, deceitful, and deception. Sorry, you're wrong. It's disgusting. Nathan's right. No, you're just lying, wrong, mistaken, deceitful. You can't have gas pressure in the first place without a container, dickhead. You can't have it. You need the container to have the gradient. That's if you have the gradient in the first place, which we can explain, but we can never get to it because you need to have the gas pressure first.
You know, Riley doesn't seem like that lovely of a man to me.
No, I'll defend him later. But yeah.
I don't mind Riley. I don't mind him. Even when he's saying all that, you know, he's still commenting on my page and being nice, and he's sort of like text messages and stuff. But I just think we all know what the Flat Earth debate team are like. We all know that to them it's about putting on a show, and I don't think there's anybody left that believes Nathan Oakley is a genuine Flat Earther. I mean, what's your view on that, Spurkismo? Do you think Nathan Oakley is a genuine Flat Earther?
I don't think. Well, yes, of course, and I just think the question needs to be answered. Conspiracy Catz. I mean, that's where the frustration is born from. Is not being answered. So, yeah.
But Catz has produced a video on this. That's what they're responding to, and it seems to me Riley's argument to support his assertion that you cannot have gas pressure without a container is to continually assert that you cannot have gas pressure without a container. That is literally his argument.
It's because there is a couple of lengthy videos on my channel, and there'll be another one coming out tomorrow. So obviously, I won't turn this into a debate. But if you really want to know what the answer is, you know, it's the Baldy Catz channel, not the Conspiracy Catz one.
Okay.
But the thing is, though, I wouldn't mind being wrong. You know, Rumpus, everyone knows the Rumpus. He sent me a message, and I've made a little mistake on something I said a couple of days ago. I'm going to correct it tomorrow. I've no problem with being wrong about something whatsoever. But the problem is, just like Jen Panda said there, that when you get debunked, as it were, by people like Anthony or Nathan, the way they debunk it makes literally it just shows a complete lack of understanding of the current scientific model. And I've got to the point now where to me it's funny, it's comical.
I mean, Spurs, I would say Nathan there in that clip, do you think he's debunking anything, or do you think he's like really drunk?
No, and that's the thing. I think it's more, and that's the thing. I think it's more focused on the way he's saying the question. You know, if he was, asking how you would, just like to ask, you'd like to be asked, then I think it'd be a lot different. But I suppose he's not. Is he asking a wrong question? That's the main thing. Is he wrong for asking that question? Because he asked that question. No, I'm asking Conspiracy Catz. He does ask that question many, many times, and is he wrong for asking that question?
You're certainly not. There's so many things. Like when I was a kid, when I was young, I had no idea why the flag should have waved on the moon, for example. I had absolutely no idea. So and you ask the questions, and then you learn, and so he's if he genuinely doesn't get it. Then of course he's not wrong for asking the question. I mean, we all learn and we all progress by asking. I'm not suffering from some sort of Dunning-Kruger. I know there's so much out there that I don't know, and I'm happy when people come in and tell me that stuff. Like I said with the Rumpus, he sent me a message. He was like, "Oh, you've cocked up here a bit. I'll just go and correct that." Brilliant. I love it.
And to be fair, Nathan is not asking a question in the clips we just saw. Nathan was making very, very strong assertions.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. I wouldn't give Nathan too much credit because he's not asking an earnest question. He's never is. He's trying to control a debate. He's muting people.
No, but
and as you saw there, what a technique that Nathan uses a lot, and this, you know, coming from someone who talks about religion and indoctrination, is he endlessly repeats catchphrases. I mean, how many times did we hear second law of thermodynamics violation in that lot? You know, he just said it over and over and over again. Like, you know, he opens his Hangout every day with a ritual of you know, this housekeeping questions where everyone has to sort of, if you like, pay homage and you know, repeat that they're still part of the belief almost. You know, it's weird.
It's an entity to me. Nathan is, you know, doesn't believe in flat Earth any more than I still believe in Santa Claus. You know, and he often refers to himself. I'm sure we've all seen it. He often refers to himself as "I'm a YouTuber. I'm a YouTuber. I'm," you know, this is the way he supplements his income.
Right.
I genuinely, you know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm on my own, but I genuinely do not think in any way, shape, or form he's doing anything other than trying to put a show on. But I feel sorry for the likes of Arwin. You know, maybe and we've all seen, unfortunately, you know, Arwin's breakdown. I'm pretty sure, you know, and I feel really sorry for him. And he's latching on to Nathan, and Nathan's taking people down with him.
Yeah, I think it's like Scott said earlier. You know, I flip between thinking that people are genuine and thinking that maybe they're not. You know, but
what makes you think he's not genuine? I mean, again, you know, he's asking the same question that any other flat earther would ask, but in a different way, possibly.
Well, he wasn't asking a question, was he? He was just shouting abuse.
No, I'm asking conspiracy Catz here. I'm saying.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that, you know, you're saying that, you know, is Nathan a real flat earther? Do I agree or something like this? And I'm saying that, well, I just hear the way that maybe he's asking, and
I get what you're saying.
If you were to speak to any of the flat earther, and he would ask the same way, good cop, you would get the same from the majority of flat earthers. They would ask you.
I did get a screenshot, and I don't know about the legality of showing private screenshots on YouTube, so I haven't. But I have had a message from Anthony when we first met. It was a screenshot of a conversation between him and Nathan, where Nathan basically admits that he understands that the Earth is a globe.
No, again, understanding the heliocentric model is different to understanding the actual Earth is a globe. You see?
Oh, this was a conversation where they were on a debate, and it was a back chat conversation. And Nathan was saying we need to stop talking about this because this perfectly proves the globe.
Right.
So we need to talk about something else.
Yeah, I've seen
that's my video, guys. Just saying.
No. Complete misunderstanding. I was privy to that conversation, and so that was of St. Bees when we saw the light from the lighthouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was that lighthouse.
Yeah. So when we saw that light, because we were trying to find that light, we found the light, and then we were questioning whether we should present it to you, Ball Earthers, or not. And you know, Nathan said, "Oh, the Ball Earthers will use it as globe evidence, and therefore we shouldn't mention it." So it was nothing to do with Nathan thinking it was a globe.
Anyway. Yeah.
You got that wrong there.
No. Wait, because let me clear this up, because so many people get this wrong. What was happening was I was asking about the focal point of the lighthouse, so we could determine where the bottom of the lighthouse, how far the bottom of the lighthouse would be above sea level. That's why we're talking about, and he was getting obsessed with the light, like going, because of what you're saying, Spurs, because he had this idea in his head that we can't let this get out about a light. And I wasn't asking that, and he was going mental. And then Riley accidentally left his chat window open, and he's going to Riley, don't let him talk about
the same thing at same
completely missed. But okay, here's my bigger point, is that he doesn't understand all this stuff, because he's missing what me and Riley were talking about, because Riley understood what we were talking about. That's why he was getting upset in that show. like, let me talk, because it's just because he could have proved me on something else, whatever, blah blah blah. But the point is, he doesn't get it. When Nathan makes a point about there's a third celestial sphere, to me, that shows me he doesn't know what the fuck we've been trying to tell him.
I think though, I wanted to address what Conspiracy Catz said though about whether Nathan does or doesn't believe, because if you look back in debates, you'll see there's a turning point, a noticeable turning point in Nathan, and it happens at debate I think 76 or 77, around about there. Now, before that, he's reasonable and he moderates the debates, in a reasonable fashion. And then the Isle of Man stuff comes up in 76, and it's 76 or 77. He starts with the Nasty Act, and it grows into what it is now. And it did cross my mind that after he'd sat there for 77 debates, at that time, all of the guys that go in my server were all going in there every day. As soon as he opened it up, Curved Water would be in there. All of the regulars.
I'd be there with Curved, holding hands.
Would be there, and after hearing whatever it would have been, 140 odd, 150 hours of flat Earth being debunked, I wonder if it didn't maybe have an effect and wear him down over time, and then he, decided where his bread was buttered, or I don't know, maybe he became frightened by the idea or whatever, and he, battened down the hatches and became the, monster he is now.
The monster we do need, not what we deserve.
It's a theory, a conspiracy theory, I guess, but it's I don't know. But that change is really obvious. That does occur.
But do you remember, Jem? Just do you remember what it was like for him in the community with the Ball Earthers, Patty and everyone? They were ripping him when
they were people. He wasn't popular because he was giving us a voice.
Yeah, and then they started to change that. You remember? Oh, we've got a show on hot potatoes now. That's what it was.
Wait, Conspiracy Catz, were you aware of Flat Earth? Before you sort of came on the scene, because it'd been going on. Perhaps you were fairly late to the party, if you don't mind me saying.
Oh, very, very late. No, I wasn't aware at all. The way it started, I was teaching a lesson at school, and this Year 9 girl come up to me, and she had a phone out. We're not allowed phones out at the school I was teaching at, so I nearly had to take it off her. But she said, "No, sir, I've got to show you this. I've got to show you this." And she showed me a video, and it was the one where Dell was sprinkling hose pipe over a football. Sorry, I'm going to stop laughing at that. I can never. And she was like, "Sir, is the Earth really flat?" And I said, "I'll tell you what I'll do." I said, "No, and I'll prove it to you." And I thought, how could I do that? And that's what led to me. Getting on the internet and finding I emailed loads of flat earthers, and there's only Anthony that got back to me, and I said, can we stage a debate, and it was completely staged. Anthony sent me the questions, I sent him my answers, we promised that we wouldn't, or I promised that I wouldn't argue with him. So basically we did this rehearsed debate that he then gave to Celebrate Truth, and they sold it as School Teacher Schooled or something. Right. And it was that made me think, yeah, you know what? Maybe this whole flat Earth thing is not as honest, and silly as I thought it was. So no, I'd not heard of it. To one of my kids at school brought it up, and that was literally just at the end of last academic year, so beginning of July. Right.
Have you found that it's spread amongst the kids? Do you see it more and more often, or?
No. This one kid never brought it up again, and I've literally. The only time I've ever heard it from any kids at school is when they've been laughing about it. Right. I honestly have never met anyone in real life that takes it seriously. I've met people online, obviously, but I've never met anyone in real life.
Right. Me neither. I'd love to as well.
Yeah, I want to know if you know who bullied Craig's kids. Who bullied Craig's kids? Do you know who that was? Were you there?
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
All right, just checking.
No, I don't know. I don't live anywhere near Craig, but I think it was. He claims it was a dad, wasn't it? Which I think's horrendous.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Yeah,
I've met two people who have, and it was at a flat Earth meetup that actually happened in my town. And one of them was from Oklahoma, and one of them was from my town. So just two, and they only came together because of that meetup.
Wow.
So, I mean, America's a much bigger place than the UK, obviously, but
yeah.
So I heard some flat earthers talking earlier, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, I saw this guy, and then I went in the bar, and there was a guy there, and I went and had my tyre changed, and there was a guy there at Riley." That was earlier.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, well, I never come across that, and I would love it. I think it was great if I could actually have, if they had sort of solicited me, you know what I mean? If they'd tried to flat smack me, it would be hard for them to escape, and I would be like their worst nightmare,
You think that, Jen, but they're just going to run away from you.
Yeah, they probably would, yeah.
They just be like, "Oh, fuck you," and they just walk away. You're an Asian. They don't. It's easier online. You can make a new sock and just carry on.
Now, the other thing that Riley's been involved in, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but there's this sort of it's a sort of a double-edged sword, if you like. He's doing this university course. And his aim within it is to change the education system. Have you seen anything about that?
I certainly have, and there's a funny story. It was funny to me. Before, we don't speak so much now, really, me and Anthony. But before we things kind of broke down, he was telling me about this, and he said it was so. He says it won't happen. He said if ever a kid speaks to somebody about flat Earth in school, the teachers will just poo-poo it, and they're not allowed to do that. They've got to at least show some kind of respect for this partisan kind of science. He said it would never happen. And I had to say to him, I said, Anthony, I'm a teacher, and the first thing that happened when a kid spoke to me about flat Earth is that I put an online debate with you on YouTube, and he was actually part of that fur kind of partisan politics. He's sort of, right. He was actually part of it, and then afterwards it would never happen. It would never happen. It was only 4 months previous that he was part of it.
Right. It's very twisted, I think, his legal challenge. It doesn't make a great deal of sense, because the case he uses as precedent is this Dimmock case. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Oh, no.
Right. Well, Dimmock was a parent and school governor who took the Secretary of State for Education and Skills to court because schools were showing the documentary, the Al Gore documentary. Help me out, someone. Inconvenient.
Oh,
Truth.
The Unfortunate Truth, or Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
Inconvenient. Yeah.
And this was said to be political, and that point wasn't actually argued by the defendant, which was the government, and because they'd already issued guidelines that went along with the movie, because within the movie, Al Gore points out he talks about how government policy, what government policies could reduce climate change. So that is obviously political, and that point wasn't argued. And then beyond that, the other points that were made, they highlighted 9 inaccuracies, and the judge agreed that these were inaccuracies. And the reason he agreed they were inaccuracies was because what was in the movie had drifted from the scientific consensus. And so he used scientific consensus as his benchmark. And yet Riley is claiming this is his sort of precedent case. Well, he wants to teach something that's different from the scientific consensus, and I don't see how in any way teaching children anything about the shape of the Earth is political. You don't have to say, you don't say the Earth's the globe and vote Labour. You know, I mean, it just the two things are just totally disconnected. Sorry, that was a very long explanation. I know. Your thoughts?
No, but that just sums up. You know, and I do like Anthony. I'm not you know, knocking
So do
Anthony.
I.
I
Find
him.
him amiable chap. I really do. A friendly, amiable chap most of the time.
Yeah, most. But he knows what he's doing, doesn't he? He's deliberately picky and, you know, and awkward. But that just I think sums him up completely. That he sees what he wants to see, and that's it. And he won't see the contradiction. He just will not see the contradiction in that at all. You know. So it just doesn't surprise me. And I think I did a video on the Baldy Cats a few weeks ago where I called him and Ranty the Laurel and Hardy of Flat Earth because of these constant sort of like calamitous contradictions that they come up with. I hope it was good nature because I like them both. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me one bit.
So, what do you reckon for what you're up to next? Then, I mean, are you going to respond to them again on this thing, or is it? I mean, I don't think there's anything else you can say, is there?
No, well, I've had a slight change of heart about how I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to try and keep, and this might not work, you know, so don't pin me down to it because I may end up not being able to figure out another option. But I want to keep Flat Earth stuff to the Baldy Cats channel and keep it just pen to paper, scientific, just explanations, just for people that want to learn sort of basic. You know, I'm no PhD or anything like that, but just people that want to do basic science. I'll do the Flat Earth and Baldy Cats, but on the Conspiracy Catz, I think there's only so many times I can laugh at people spinning a globe or pouring water on a table, and I want to move on to other things. So no, I may respond to the Globe Busters tonight purely because. Well, purely because I watched it and I've just got lots of ideas in my head, but I'm not gonna spin it out at all. No.
You can give
Can
us
I say I think it's a good idea to you're saying just have it simple for the people who want to learn because you don't need to be a PhD because they're not PhDs. I mean, we need it's a simple idea. It's not a PhD level concept, and to not give them too much more because the thing is a lot of the trouble is we give them a lot of the ammunition to keep this whole thing going, right? You know, keep the argument going. A load of people get bored, the next bunch of people come along and they just argue with them, and you know, I think there is a point where you just say you've made your peace, and the more respectful you can keep it and simple, you know, the more people will listen. The open-minded ones, you know, obviously the dogmatic and always going to thumb you down, but
yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people who will listen. Definitely, you will have. You know, a lot of people will have listened. You know,
but I think that's been my mistake. I've always tried to keep things respectful, but I think looking back, I've tried to keep respectful with what I've thought was like cheeky banter, maybe. But then, you know, I think possibly I've overstepped the mark a few times, not intentionally. You know, so to go just to dealing with the facts and nothing else might give it a bit more credit. You know, might give it a bit more credibility for anyone who's on the fence. If you're not on the fence, you're not going to listen to me no matter what. But if you're on the fence, maybe it gives it a bit more credibility.
Right, and I honestly, as someone who's probably the most sensitive baller to people being rude to flat earthers, I'd say you haven't really done that much bad at all. I've never really had a problem with you. I think you do. You know, you do good stuff. Oh, I don't know. I don't watch all of it because I'm not that interested because I'm where I am now. I believe the Earth's a globe.
I think it's all been good humoured. I think Del probably loves what you've done with him.
I don't think he'd tell me that if he saw me to my face. No, but no. I think to be fair, I actually think Del. You know, if you were talking to him about anything other than flat Earth, or if you were talking to him and other people weren't watching in terms of a debate where he had to, you know, stand his ground, I think it'd be a good laugh. Yeah. You know, I've got no. I think he'd be all right. You know, but
I was having a conversation with him once in a back chat, in the Hangouts back chat, and he'd said we were sort of ribbing him, you know, and he'd said that he was a funny guy, and I'd said something like, you know, there's absolutely nothing funny about you, Dad, or something to that effect, and then, you know. A few lines on, he said something hilarious that really made me laugh. So I said, actually, I have to retract that comment. That was actually pretty funny. You know, it was witty and well timed. So, you know, I'm sure you're right. I think he would be a giggle. But he's very, very serious about his flat Earth. So I don't know.
Do you think it's not his on? Because I spent like 2 or 3 hours chatting to him. You know when you get just left in a hangout offline with someone. Do you know what I mean? You're the last two, and we must have chatted for 2 or 3 hours. Like I thought it was great, and then I tried to go onto his show. He was a complete dick to me. I was like, wow, and I was being so reasonable, like compared to what I wanted to say. And I just thought, well, I even said that to him. Well, if I ever went on his show, I reckon you'd be different. You know, no. And, you know, I did go on his show a month or two after I chatted to him, but still, like it was. You know, I do think he does put the show on. I think he really does. You know, and I still think he's a cool guy. You know.
He puts up with a lot. I know he puts. I was watching last night, and he puts up with a lot of sniping, doesn't he? And a lot of.
Yeah, but he does it deliberately.
Right.
Like if you Tim's exposed it quite a lot over the years, you know. But like,
it became a thing for a while where you knew that Tim was going to go in every Saturday and snipe him, and you just knew it was going to happen. And all Dell needed to do was download OBS.
You could be the most boring flat earther, right? Who goes in and he'll go, "Oh, I'll beat you out." But if you're P Mars or Russian Vids at the moment, or whoever's giving him the views, he'll let them sit in the panel without ejecting them. Do you know what I mean? And let them chip in.
Right.
So I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He you know, Russian Vids give him a lot of attention because he is for me, he was an entry to Flat Earth. Do you know what I mean? He's a very, very influential YouTuber. And you know, he's obsessed with Dell right now. It's really weird, and I think Dell knows that that's a good thing for him. So
I've missed that. There's still a lot of people that I'm not familiar with, and Russian Vids is a name I've heard, but I don't know him at all.
He's been banned. You see, what happened was because he's so big, he's had most of his channels banned. So when you try and look for him, you won't see many views. But I'm telling you, he's had more views than most conspiracy people.
He's an auto hoaxer, though, isn't he? Done a lot of hoax stuff.
Everything. He is I think I remember people. I can't remember. You know, on our old thing, talking about they knew him from the past, and he really did just sort of jump on things. You know what I mean, from forums and stuff. So he's kind of jump on any idea, but he has just made an impact from copying other people's ideas a lot. You know, and I think he's actually quite a nice guy. I think he's totally mental. He does these every now and then. He's got these conspiracy videos. The trannies. He's all into that as well. And then you'll just see a video of him feeding his turtles at home, and you're just like, oh. These turtles are pretty cute.
So does anyone have any final thoughts? Because we've been going for 2 whole hours, which is a big show for us.
I really wish that we knew how much money they made. I'm curious to know if they...
I was going to ask that. I was going to say, hey, did you make money? I've been hearing this from people all day.
I was overly polite when I asked, and they avoided the
Yeah,
question.
you were going that way, Scott. I could hear you going that way. Someone asked that in the chat, didn't they? I think it was Shroom.
They did seem to aggressively avoid answering that, Scott. So
Yeah. Sometimes people do. Sometimes they can't because of NDAs and stuff. So.
But I mean, if you think about it, like, all you have to do is consider their travel expenses, the cost of their equipment, and how many people saw it.
Well, the question is, how much did Netflix give them for it?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Not a
I
lot,
gotcha.
I'm thinking. To be fair, they probably paid to go on Netflix. Sorry.
How much do you think Netflix gave them for it?
It could be anywhere. I know people that have sold something to Netflix for literally $5,000, so nothing. And I know people that have sold something to Netflix for $10 million, so it could be literally anything. Like, it just depends.
Right.
So what would you consider to be the lowest threshold they should have sold it?
I bet you they must have spent on this documentary. I bet you they spent $1 million on the documentary, probably. So they needed to sell it for
Are you serious? $1 million?
Well, they were on it for a year, they said, right?
So they're paying.
Yeah, but their crew was really
but
limited.
Still $1 million.
They had two photographers, I think, and it was a very small crew. It was mostly the people you saw on screen today, and like 2 or 3 other people.
Maybe $500,000 then.
I'd say it's probably 350,000. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, maybe. It kind of depends too on like what their experience is like. Are they used to making, studio budgeted movies or not, or are they indie?
I'm just saying they have to pay themselves a salary of 100,000+ a year. Do you know what I mean?
No, they really don't. I mean, that's entirely dependent on what money they have available to them. them how they need to spend it. So
yeah.
Well, they don't seem to be doing that well. They
No.
came on here
They
after
came
all
here,
to
yeah.
talk
They
to
look pretty
normal
depressed.
normal people online.
That's not very nice.
Sorry. They did look depressed. I was going to say some more questions, but I thought they looked depressed.
well, given that you're on our crap show, how are things going for you?
They didn't get a theatrical release, which is really the big sign that maybe it didn't go as good as it could have. Because normally, if they got a theatrical release, that would imply that they were going to make real money.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. But, I mean, to go back to this show, though, I mean, we do have a decent show here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Luce, don't worry.
Backpedal furiously.
I'm
happy to be a part of it.
We need to make it more indecent, I think. That's the thing. That's the aim.
Dear.
Anyway,
it's good to have them on, though. That was, I do think I am genuinely going to buy it on iTunes to get the whole thing. I think it does look really interesting. I don't want to sound like a shill or whatever.
Well, there's $5 there. So
I got it on iTunes. It's definitely worth seeing.
Yeah, they told me that the bootleg is only 60%, boys and girls. So, there you go. Get the iTunes.
that bootleg was profound shit. Yeah, it was
That
from a
is
bad angle, bad sound, and it was like 2/3 of the film. So yeah,
Does look funny, and I think it was fair. I genuinely think it's a fair. It's not over the top. It's not Flight the Flat Earth. You know, I want to rant about Craig, but I'll shut up now.
I have to wonder if you plan to bootleg a film, wouldn't you try to get a seat in the middle? You know,
just terrible that bootleg. Wasn't it? Really was awful. Anyway, let's say goodbye. Thanks so much, Conspiracy Catz, and I'm so sorry I kept you waiting so long. I hope I'll be able to get you back. I hope I'll be able to get you back another time where we can devote more time to you.
Oh, I've absolutely loved it start to finish. That, and just to be listening to that conversation with those three. What they've done is amazing. That film, loved it. So no, thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being here, mate. I'm going to do a quick round out now, and then we're going to run the titles at the end. So I'll ask everyone to stay silent when I do those, and I'm going to say to our audience, thanks again. Shut up. Join us again. Actually, we're not here next week. We're having a week off, so join us again in 2 weeks for more fabulous flatness. In the meantime, if you see something that you think should be included in the show, please post a timestamp link in the comments section of this video. Or join our Discord server. The link is in the description, along with channel links for tonight's panel. Our Discord server has over 1,200 members, and we managed to keep a conversation going virtually 24/7. We welcome members with opposing views, so click the link and join us. Thanks again to tonight's fabulous panel, and thanks to all of you for watching. We'll be back around the same time in 2 weeks. Shout out to Shroomy. So until then, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share this video.
Oh, and incidentally, Twit sends her thanks and goodbyes to the crew. She had to leave a bit early, so.
Oh, awesome.
Bye, Twit. Bye. Yeah. Sorry. Carry on. Just carry on, guys.
You're misleading the public. You're lying to people.
We are part of a giant studio set. All the world's a stage and you're on it.
Jesus Christ, and suck my dick. Suck my dick.
Suck my dick, Earth, with that bullshit. Man's getting rude.
I'm lucky to you, right? It could be a what's it? It could be an onion ring, a hairless monkey jumping through the vacuum, or a potato rock.
Yeah, if we dumped what we found right now, it'd be bad. It would be bad.
Can't have a flat Earth and things making sense.